And we're going to start with the adoption of the agenda. Yes. So moved by Councillor Dowd. Councillor Palm, you have a...
Yes, I have a comment, Your Worship. I'll second the motion for adoption, but I would like to ask if Council would entertain moving the last 3 items on tonight's agenda up. And this is the rationale. We received an email earlier, I think it was last Friday, from our corporate officer asking for the library item, which is the last item on tonight's agenda, to be moved up so that librarian doesn't have to sit through the whole agenda tonight. I'm fine with that. But at the same time, under unfinished business, where we left off 2 weeks ago, we were dealing with Powell River Community Forest Fall grants, and we had to leave that undecided, as well as item 12.2, which is the name change postponement by Mayor Wasnow. I think a lot of folks that are in this gallery tonight are probably here to hear the comments in that regard. So I would ask Council to consider moving all those 3 items forward after item 10, which is the removed items from the consent agenda.
Okay, through our corporate officer, do you need a formal amendment to the motion to accept the agenda?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think that the motion is appropriate, and the library item could be added either immediately after item 8 for the consent agenda, or after the consent agenda, prior to items 12.1 and 12.2.
Okay. Well, yes, Councillor Elliott.
I just wanted to speak to the amendment if I could. So I think it's a really good idea to move the library forward. I was wondering if council thought that having, in the event that those conversations also go along, we have a lot of staff doing the regular business under legislative matters and trying to get some things done that might not necessarily need to be around for the entire evening either. So I just wondered if it might be most financially efficient to not move those ones forward.
Would our CAO like to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Wasnow. In terms of the financial implications, it's not really relevant to the situation. It's really at the will of council with what they want to discuss first.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dowd.
I'm pretty sure I heard Councillor Palm make a motion to move the last 3 items to right after the items removed from the closed agenda. And since we're having a council meeting, I'll second that motion, and I agree with it, because I think what most of the people in the room are here to talk about is those 3 items.
Okay. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. Question for staff. I know we've noticed a little bit of a gap in our procedures bylaw, and that the public input period doesn't apply to unfinished business, and these items, 2 of them fall under unfinished business. And I think the intent is, like, the council, if people want to speak to those items, they would be able to. And so I just want to make sure that if they're moved, they're still in a place where if the will of council is to invite public input for the unfinished business items, as well as the ones that are in our procedure bylaw. So through the mayor to staff, how can we ensure?
Through the chair, procedure bylaw does not provide for public input to be received for in respect of unfinished business. And the 2 matters that are on the agenda tonight as unfinished business are clearly unfinished business. I don't really see how they can be categorized any other way. which leaves council in a quandary if your intent is to hear from the public this evening on those items. Unfortunately, you're not in a position to provide for an amendment to the procedure bylaw. That would require notice in advance and published in the newspaper. So unfortunately, you're in a position where, no, you cannot, in accordance with the procedure bylaw, hear from the public in respect of the unfinished business that's on tonight's agenda.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion before Councillor Dowd?
I think we have an amendment on the floor.
We have a amendment on the floor. Councillor Almeida?
Two questions, if you don't mind, Mayor. I'm not opposed to the amendment as it stands. I feel, though, we should do the library motion first because it's probably going to be relatively simple with less discussion. But second question for the corporate officer, based on your last comment, I think it was in January sometime, we had a similar situation with some unfinished business that when we adopted the agenda, did we not move those into new business to allow for conversation from the community?
Through the chair, that's correct, Councillor Almeida. However, in those circumstances, I'm trying to remember what the item was, but it was one where we really had a choice as to where we put it on the agenda, and without thinking about public input period, had placed it in unfinished business when it was capable of being placed in new business. And so that was a different circumstance whereby the item could be moved to new business and thereby receive public input.
Thank you.
Okay, we have an amendment. Any further discussion?
Just to clarify, this is to move those three items up, with library being the first of the three items.
Correct. All in favor? Passed unanimously, so we'll go now to the main motion as amended. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. We'll go to 7, which is the public input period. And as discussed here, subject to the rules of conduct set out in Section 11 of the Council Procedure Bylaw, up to 3 members of the public have an opportunity to provide comment for a maximum of 2 minutes on items listed under legislative matters, committee recommendations, and new business. Questions may not be asked about a public hearing where the bylaw has not yet been adopted, defeated, or abandoned, or any other matters listed in Section 19.8 of the Council Procedure Bylaw. And there's also the ability to call in. Would anybody like to come forward at this time? Do we have anybody online? Right. Thank you. We'll move now to general matters. 8.1 is the RCMP Q3 quarterly update and decriminalization. Staff Sergeant Dyson.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. I, for one, was completely surprised to hear that all these people aren't here to listen to me. I'm here to give you an update on for our third quarter report for the RCMP detachment here on Powell River. So we'll just go through our calls for service for the third quarter and for the year to date. We have a slight decrease, 1.5% over the third quarter over the same period last year. So we're down to 1,161 for that period. Year to date for the fiscal year, again, we're down slightly over that period as well. Our check well-being files for the third quarter were up 19% over the third quarter last year, and overall year to date, again, we're up almost 10% for those types of files. Our mental health act calls, there's a slight decrease in the third quarter. However, year over, there's a 41% increase in Mental Health Act calls for service in the city. Unspecified assistance files. These are files that don't really neatly fall into any other particular type of call. For the third quarter, there's a decrease over last year, and for the year over, there's a 42% decrease, which is good to see. Missing persons files, there were only 7 in the third quarter, whereas there was 14 in the third quarter last year. And again, overall, there's a over 50% decrease in these types of fault calls as well. And the decreases are going to be a sort of an ongoing theme through all of our files, or most of our files. As I say that, there's 50% increase in our third quarter impaired driving files. This is a lot to do with several of our members have really started to pick up their patrols and traffic enforcement activities. So we're seeing a huge increase there. As a matter of fact, one of our members, I just got the documentation that they're receiving the Alexa Award for last year for intercepting a large number of impaired drivers over the year. Persons crimes are down. These are assaults and those types of things. For the third quarter, there's a 6% decrease, and for the year over, there's a 16% decrease. Assaults, so these fall under those as well. Again, there's a 16% decrease in the third quarter over last year and 19% year over. Sexual offenses, thankfully, are down significantly for the third quarter compared to last year. And for the year over, again, they're down over 40%, which is great to see. Our harassment files are down as well. Not a huge decrease, but 16% for the quarter and almost 10% for the year over. Uttering threats files, there was a increase, 45% increase for the quarter, but for the year, there is a slight decrease in those calls overall. Our property crime numbers are staying pretty static. There's a 3% decrease, which is negligible. However, almost a 10% decrease in reported property crimes over the year. Our bike thefts, we show only an increase for the quarter from only 2. Again, these are reported bike thefts. One of the issues that we're really trying to push is to have people report these so we can try to track them better. And I'll talk about our Project 529 project at the end, but that is engaged and starting to show some fruit so far. And again, for the year, there is a 31% increase in bike thefts. Break and enters. So if we're just looking at third quarter, our residential B&Es, all B&Es are up. There's a 22% increase overall. The other B&Es, so that don't fall neatly into one of those categories, those are down by 1. For the year, there is an overall decrease of 11% for break and enters, residential, business, and others. Theft unders, there is an increase for the third quarter. And there is a fairly large increase in for the year over of 25%. Shoplifting files, our reported shoplifting files are down 19% for the quarter compared to last year, and a 44% decrease in over the year. One of the things anecdotally that we've heard is that there are certain corporations that have company policies where they are not reporting these, which makes it a challenge for us to try to address them or to get property back. Oftentimes we will get third-party complaints where somebody watches somebody shoplift and the company, because of their policy, won't cooperate with those, provide evidence or follow through on those particulars. So there's really no victim in those particular cases. So that's been a bit of a challenge for us. Theft from vehicles, there's a 70% increase from 10 to 17 over the quarter. Over the year, there's a 72% increase. I referenced this in the very end. There's a bit of a challenge. We believe that we know a single person who is almost single-handedly the reason for most of this. We are working to try to get that person off the streets and not doing this. It's been a bit of a challenge for us, and I'll explain a bit of that at the end. Theft of vehicle, we're up from 4 to 6 for the quarter. However, for the year, we're down 16% from 18 to 15. Frauds are basically staying static from the third quarter last year and year over exactly the same. Our mischiefs, we have a 24% decrease for the quarter, which is great, and for the year down by 28%. So we're seeing a decrease in that type of activity, reported that type of activity. Our drug offenses for the third quarter of this year is down by about 53%. But however, for the year over, they are up. There's a 20% increase in our drug offenses for the year. Our drug trafficking files, which fall into there as well, were down slightly over the quarter. However, we're up year over from 12 to 16 for a 33% increase. Our weapons offenses are down for the quarter and down for the year by 12%. Just looking at our total file count for the detachment. So this covers all files for all of our areas, including what we call the unorganized or the provincial areas. So we're staying pretty much static. There is a bit of a decrease to 4,954 for 2025 compared to the year before. So we are trending downwards a little teeny bit, but it's not a huge or significant change. So one of the things that's been in the news lately and that I was asked to sort of address here is the drug decriminalization, which ended January 31st. So with the end of the drug decriminalization pilot project, all controlled substances are once again prohibited to possess within the province of British Columbia. There are a few exceptions to that. There are some exemptions in certain locations, but overall, they are now prohibited again. So our members will be applying a holistic approach in enforcing the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. However, they'll be guided by the principles that are noted in Section 10 of the Act, which are outlined here. This is not verbatim for the most part from the Act, but just to give you an idea. So problematic substances, that use should be addressed primarily as a health and social issue rather than a strictly enforcement-based issue. Intervention should be founded on evidence-based best practices and should aim to protect the health, dignity, and human rights of individuals. Criminal sanctions imposed in respect of the possession of drugs for personal use can increase the stigma associated with drug use and are not consistent with established public health evidence. So if we're going to go that way, we have to understand why we're doing it and what the purpose is. And try to do it in a manner that doesn't stigmatize those that use these substances. Intervention should address the root cause of the problematic substance use, including and encouraging measures such as education, treatment, aftercare, rehabilitation, and social reintegration. So getting people who use these substances into care and into the right resources is a huge part of what we aim to do. And judicial resources are more appropriately used in relation to offenses that pose a risk to public safety. In some instances, there was an issue recently where a young child found somebody's lost or discarded drugs and ended up with them in their mouth. Obviously, that's a huge public safety issue. So those types of issues we want to see if we can address and get people the help that they need so that we don't see instances like that have a much more serious end result. So as I've mentioned before, and as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, Project 529 Garage is deployed in Powell River. We've seen an increase in the number of bicycles that are now registered on the system, which is great. We encourage everyone with a bike to download the app and get the bike registered. So in the event that it's taken, that we are able to try to locate it and have more eyes looking for that bike and try to get it back and try to address the people that are stealing these bikes. Not just have them continue. We had a registration table at the Kings game on January 31st, which is well attended. I haven't looked to see since then how many responses we got, if any, from then, if there was an uptick. But we also have a registration table scheduled for a cycling film festival in April that we're hoping to actually have bikes there onto the system and identified so that we're hoping to reduce the number of thefts and get them come back when they are. As I talked earlier, one of the issues that we're having with identifying some people is working closely with various partners to address several issues, one of which being the theft from vehicles. And we're trying to sort of increase our collaboration with some of our partners to address the clients that we share together and not run into roadblocks or have issues where we're focusing on different things. Our block watch program has seen a huge growth just in the last couple of months. We've included 5 new blocks into the program. Those are in the Westview area. And so that with the existing block that existed in Wildwood, we now have six blocks with more that are in the works. So we welcome those areas into the program, and hopefully we'll see a reduction in problems in those areas and an increased reporting for problems in those areas. And that is my presentation.
Thank you very much. We're going to start for questions on the far right side and work around.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Staff Sergeant. I was curious, the drug trafficking notes that you had over there, there was, I think, 16 cases for the year so far. And I imagine in a situation like that, it's not necessarily an investigation is maybe not so cut and dry as maybe some other offenses in terms of catching someone in the act and things like that. So when you're reporting data, I guess I was curious how many of these situations are just the cases on file, or is an indication of a case kind of being closed? Like how does this RCMP determine at that point, especially for a situation like trafficking in that case?
So that number would be those files that are reported during that period. There will be ongoing files that could have begun in a previous quarter or a previous year, for example, that will continue and come to fruition. Those would have been reported on when they were actually reported to us and the file created.
Thank you.
No questions. I just wanted to express appreciation for the year to date. I think it gives a really good comparison. Thank you.
So Silthcott.
Thank you. I actually have 3 questions. You spoke to reporting and how some businesses particularly are not reporting shoplifting. I spoke with someone today who told me something pretty distressing, but and it was about a robbery essentially that happened a short time ago that was not on the street. Cash was involved, and I urged her to get her friend, who she was telling me about, to call, at least just tell you. I'm just asking this question because I'm expecting the answer is that you would urge anyone who was involved in any kind of an incident like that to report it, because and I suggested to her that the results very possibly are longer term or could be involved with other incidents, which she hadn't considered. But I just was I right in urging her to report anything like this?
Absolutely. It is extremely important that we get these notifications. Sometimes what people will find is we're not able to deal directly with that particular instance. We may not have enough information. However, what often happens is the methods used, some of the words used, the clothing worn will link several different offenses together and allow us to identify a string of offenses that happened by one person. And that has happened here recently where the person wore the same clothes for every offense, and we were able to link several together and get that person. So, we have a process to try to help people, especially when they go through these traumatizing things. Our victim services are very, very good at trying to help them through the process. And not trying to re-victimize them as the process goes. But it's important that we get these people stopped that are causing these, especially the violent acts against our community.
Councilor Silthcott, if you don't mind, we'll go around and come back.
Thank you.
Councilor, do you have a?
Yeah, but I'll ask them one at a time if you like. So when I looked at the results, the report earlier, I went through and read them all. I didn't notice a huge uptake in trafficking or other drug crimes from previous years. And I know that decriminalization has actually completely happened been taken off the table right at the end of January. But before that, earlier in the year, the rules on possession were changed. And I don't see that that has resulted in a huge increase in people being apprehended for possession or for public drug use. Am I correct in that? And I think it's explained in your presentation there why that might not have happened.
Absolutely. And those rules existed prior to January 31st, and they've been something that we've used to guide our activities long before that.
That's it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to let you know that I'm here to listen to you.
Thank you.
With respect to decriminalization and your focus on public safety for the way you're going to use these changes, public safety has been a big, huge concern of everybody, of a lot of people in our community. And so can you give us some examples on things you might be changing on the ground to help address the public safety issues that people are worried about?
Not quite sure I understand the question in that.
So we had the decriminalization, and now we have the recriminalization. So we have added tools to help us keep the community safe. And so would your policing look different as a result of that? And if so, how?
What it does for us is it opens up another avenue to be able to address some of these issues. Whereas before, the criminal avenue wasn't open during the pilot project, that is now open. All the other things that were open and available before are still there. All this does for us is it opens up that in certain cases where it would be appropriate, we have that opportunity to be able to look at that avenue as maybe something that's appropriate along with these other projects and services that are available.
Okay, I have another question, but I'll wait.
Councillor Palm.
Your Worship, Sergeant, it's always good to see you in the chamber, and I meant no disrespect by moving items up. Look forward to your report. It gives us a good window on the world and our little community of Powell River. So one quick question, and that is in terms of the car thefts, are we seeing that primarily as a result of citizens leaving their car unlocked, or is it ramping up where there's actually break-ins to those vehicles? So I think that's an important point.
I don't know specifically. I haven't looked at in those cases how many are actually with the vehicles left. I know that many of our thefts from vehicle historically have been crimes of opportunity where a door is left unlocked. I can tell you that one of the thefts for sure was a properly secured vehicle that was stolen out of a driveway and then we later found. There were some other things that sort of went into that particular thing, but for the rest of them, I really can't answer specifically.
For that, appreciate it. Thank you, Worship.
As a pre-COVID block watch leader, I'm curious as to whether or not you have an informative program for people that are thinking about becoming a block watch leader.
Yes, if anybody's looking for some information, if you contact our office, our community policing member is able to provide as much information as possible to be able to give people an idea of what the program is, how it works, how people get involved, and how to get their block started.
Thank you. So, Amita, do you have a follow-up?
No question, but as a follow-up to the block watch, maybe RCMP staff can share some of that block watch information with our media team for a post on the city's social media to help spread the word.
We've already met with them and that process is underway.
Councillor Southcott.
Yeah, thank you. So relative to that situation where the child ended up with a little package of drugs, when my son was quite young, just before we moved back here, at a birthday party, I brought a couple, because I was working in the industry, so I brought a couple of needles, the kind that are used by users, home, and the birthday party was outside dominantly, so I just stuck them down beside the curb, and at one point I had a little 1 or 2 minute education session with the whole group of kids at this birthday party, and they learned I made it a riddle. Do you see anything dangerous around here? And they're all looking around. And, one of them saw the needles pretty quickly. And I said, okay, what are they and what do you do with them? And it was as simple as that. Of course, the answer is you don't touch them and you call an adult, which I think that people in North Vancouver, where I was living at the time, were a little more in tune than our community. And I don't say that critically because I think the shocking street situations in our community are a lot newer than they are in Vancouver. But the question is there any thought, like your community policing officer, is there any programs that might help our community to learn about this kind of stuff, or alerts, or has there been some thought about, I hate to use the word education because nobody likes that word, I think, but just kind of get us in position so things like we're more alert. That's what I'm wondering about. Has that been thought about? I know that your community policing officer did a session with the merchants in the mall, which I attended, and I was very impressed. I thought that was an excellent initiative. So I'm just wondering if something more can be done for our whole community. Is that a possibility? Could it happen perhaps with another agency?
We can definitely look into that. I'm not personally familiar if there's a pre-existing situation like that. The DARE program was kind of along those lines, although that's no longer in existence. I can look into that and I can report back. I'm not familiar if there's a pre-existing one. However, if there isn't, we can definitely design something where we can have an open house and discuss some of these issues. My understanding, and I'm not completely familiar with that file down to the, all the nuances, but I think part of the issue here was a very young child, and it was a colorful package. And, as we all know, young children, everything goes in the mouth, and it was colorful to draw attention. And it just, it would have taken just a slight moment of a parent not paying attention for this to happen. So luckily they found it, but I will look into if there's a pre-existing situation that we can deal with. I would be surprised if there wasn't in the current climate, and we can see what we can find.
Councillor Doug.
I'm going to sneak in a two-part question here. First off, it looks to me like the numbers are generally down. There's a couple of anomalies in the figures there where there's an increase in the last year.
Absolutely.
But mostly they're down. And my question is, would you describe Powell River as being in the midst of a crime wave? And maybe you could compare the crime that we're seeing in Powell River with other neighboring communities. Is it higher or lower?
I don't know the numbers in other places. I just got back from a conference with our other commanders, and in discussions with those, I think we're in a much better place than most places. That's anecdotal. I wouldn't say we're in the middle of a crime wave. I think we have our blips like we're seeing with our theft from vehicle right now, but overall, I think our crime statistics are relatively low compared to other places.
Thank you.
You have another question?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. So with respect to decriminalization, which is our newest thing happening, can you confirm that the exemptions that OPS sites had even prior to decriminalization are still in existence? And if people are fearing traveling to and from OPS sites, is there anything you can speak to about that?
So yes, I can't speak specifically to ours as to when theirs expires, but yes, those exemptions still exist. That was the sort of exceptions that I told you about for that in my discussion where we talked about with a few exceptions. Those are the ones I'm referring to. So certain places still have those exemptions. As far as traveling to and from, if somebody were to draw attention of the police and ended up in a situation where they were being dealt with and drugs were located, then those 5 points would be taken into consideration in part of the discussion with them to decide what the correct, what an appropriate level of response would be, including possibly criminally, or, whatever the appropriate thing is, get them some resources, whatever the situation happens to be. And it would be, each situation would be considered on its own merits.
Thank you so much.
Any additional?
Your Worship, just a quick question to clarify for the public. I think it's very important in terms of what happened to the infant that was involved with the drugs. And that package that was shown in that, is that an illegal substance that's trafficked, not handed out at for example, at an OPM?
I don't know. I don't know if we've tested yet what was in that product. I believe we have, but I'm not 100% positive. If it's what we think it is, that is not something that would be handed out at an OPS site. That would not be a controlled.
Thanks for that. Yep.
Or a safe supply.
Any additional questions before we move on? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item is the territorial announcement. I'd like to acknowledge that we're holding this meeting on the traditional territories of the Klamath Nation. We'll now move to the consent agenda. Anybody wish to move the consent agenda? Councilor Southcott? Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Okay, 11.1, tourism service agreement audit requirement.
Mayor, the moved items this is where those moved items show up, the library and the other two agenda items.
14.1.
To ensure the library, oh, sorry, that's separate. Yes. Okay, so do we have that on the? So 11.2 billion, oop, here we go.
15.1.
Thank you very much. So public library funding motion. It's requested by the Powell River Public Library. We have somebody that's going to talk to this, or should the council ask any questions?
I can take it if you don't mind.
Yep.
Just checking, does the corporate officer need us to read the whole essay, or just as it's written in the motion is fine? Or as it's written in the package? I can do either, but I wanted to confirm.
Yeah, I think just reading out the motion.
Okay, fair enough. So I'll read the motion and I can add discussion later. So this is a AVICC conference is coming up in April. So this is a resolution to go towards AVICC. So whereas public libraries in British Columbia are primarily funded by local governments, the provincial government's financial contribution is also critical to ongoing library operations, and province's 14 million in core funding for BC's 71 library systems has not increased since 2021. Even as the population has grown by nearly 30% and inflation by more than 35%, and libraries continue to shoulder growing expectations without the necessary provincial support. And whereas libraries have taken on an ever-expanding role in advancing provincial objectives for community well-being, helping job seekers and small businesses, providing safe spaces during emergencies and extreme weather, supporting residents facing mental health, substance abuse, and housing challenges, and advancing reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. Therefore, be it resolved that UBCM call on the provincial government to A, immediately increase the annual core funding for public libraries to 30 million, and B, index that amount to the cost of living and inflationary pressures in future years, both recommended by the Select Standing Committee on Finance and Government Services and repeatedly requested by the BC Public Library Partners, and to establish both a dedicated capital funding program to assist local governments in upgrading, expanding, and constructing library facilities, and an advisory body under Section 52(1) of the Library Act to review the provincial library funding model in consultation with local governments and First Nations.
Any further discussion?
I may.
So
for the benefit of those in the audience and those watching at home, this might sound a little deja vu, and it has been, I think, for many years, for the 3 years I've been on council, and I think the 8 years prior to me when Councillor Southcott was the library liaison. there has constantly been a motion passed from many communities to UBCM. The first step of that is to our regional conference, which is coming up in April, the Vancouver Island Conference. This motion hasn't had much traction, unfortunately, with the provincial government over the years. It keeps getting nudged along, and with the working of the BC Library Association and the trustees, they've revised the motion to try approaching the government with a little different tactic, and hope to continue to get an increase in funding. But the libraries continue to provide more services and are asked to provide more to their local community, and yet our provincial government hasn't given them a consistent funding increase to help with that support.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm very much in favor of this motion every time it comes forward, but I did want to make the point that at the UBCM we just attended back in October, we had a special resolution which amalgamated pretty much all of the various motions that came forward for the libraries, that included all of these items and then some, passed almost unanimously amongst UBCM across the entire province, and was responded to by Premier Eby at that very same conference on stage, where he indicated this is a year of trying to cut budgets, and he didn't see this making any headway with his government this year. So the other thing they did at UBCM was they changed their rules for accepting resolutions. And so even if it passes at AVICC, it likely won't make the floor at UBCM, because it's an existing resolution already within the body of their adopted resolutions, and they changed the rules about accepting resolutions that are a repeat, that are already part of their bank of resolutions. And since the special resolution that passed was very comprehensive and sits within the bank of UBCM resolutions that have already been approved, I suspect it won't make it to the resolution floor or as part of the resolutions for this year. But I don't mind passing this resolution, because our council hasn't put forward any other AVICC resolutions. We have a cap of 3 for our group, and we won't be displacing any other new resolutions, so that it's fine. I think I'll vote for it. I just wanted to make the point that it probably won't get to UBCM, and it may get turned down by AVICC for the same reason.
My comment is that having sat on the board of the library board and been very active in the fundraising and development for the new library, I would encourage everybody that's interested in what the library has to offer to send a note to our MLA, Radine, because as Councillor Elliott has passed, simply going through AVIC to go to UBCM to go to the province is a long-winded way and likely to be far less effective than if the citizens here wrote our MLA and asked her to make it a priority. Any further before I call the vote? All in favor? Passes unanimously.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, may I ask council to direct staff, provide a motion to direct staff to forward the motion to AVIC?
Is there a consensus? Yes, you have a consensus. Thank you. We'll now move to, not sure what the number is now, but it's the Powell River Community Forest 2025 Fall Grants Reconsideration. And I'd like to ask our corporate officer to go over the procedures involved here.
Thank you, Mayor. So I wanted to provide council with a little bit of a recap and clarify a few things, and also provide some clarification and awareness for the public as to what took place at the last meeting and where we're at on this particular item and how we're intending to move forward. So firstly, council will pick up where they left off pursuant to the draft minutes of the January 22nd council meeting. Please bear in mind that under our council procedure bylaw, the minutes only record motions which have been defeated or carried, or whether as moved or as amended. While a motion was made by the mayor in respect of the first and second active clauses of the matter, it was neither defeated nor carried, so it does not yet appear in the minutes. As a reminder, and for the benefit of the public, the motion from the mayor, seconded by Councillor Palm, was as follows: that council not approve a fall 2025 Powell River Community Forest grant of $250,000 to Youth and Family for Foundry Foundation, and that the following words be removed from the second active clause of the resolution, which accepted a number of applications that were recommended by the Powell River Community Forest Board. There were subsequent questions regarding the reconsideration process, which I have sought to clarify for council prior to this evening's continuation of the matter. In a nutshell, there are three different processes by which reconsideration may be brought to the council table. Firstly, pursuant to Section 23 of the delegation bylaw, some delegated decisions may be appealed to council for reconsideration of the delegate's decision. So it's essentially an appeal from a delegated staff decision. The second method by which a reconsideration can come to council is by Section 35 of the council procedure bylaw, which provides that a council member who voted in the majority on a matter or was not present at the meeting may move that the matter be reconsidered. The seconder on that motion can be someone who voted either way on the matter. A reconsideration under this provision is a two-step process. The first step is that council votes without debate as to the merits of the matter on whether it should be reconsidered. If that vote is not carried, the reconsideration is defeated and the chair moves on to the next item on the agenda. If the first vote is carried, then council moves on to debate the merits of the matter and vote again on it. At this point, the original motion or the original resolution is considered to be opened up and on the floor as if it had not yet been voted upon. The third method by which a reconsideration can come before council, and the process that we are following with respect to this matter, is through Section 131 of the Community Charter, which provides that the mayor may, subject to certain conditions, require that council reconsider and vote again on a matter. The statutory right associated with this process dispenses with the first step noted above with respect to the procedure under the procedure bylaw. So it does not require a vote on whether or not to reconsider the matter. Thus, when the matter is called on the agenda, the original resolution is considered to be opened up and on the floor as if it had not yet been voted upon. The chair may determine the order of speakers, and any member may put forward a procedural motion when called upon, such as division of the question or amendment, subject to rules of procedure applicable to such motions. At the last meeting, Councillor Southcott requested division of the matter in accordance with Section 31(8) of the Council Procedure Bylaw. This does not require a seconder or a vote. Thus, the minutes from that meeting reflect that this procedural step has been taken. Mayor's motion to amend was objected to by Councillors Elliott and Doubt as a procedurally improper amendment. In other words, to do the opposite intent of a motion by adding the word not, and that the appropriate course of action would simply be to vote against it if that is the council member's desired result. The mayor accepted that objection and was prepared to call a question on the first active clause, unamended, but yielded to Councillor Isaacson's request to speak to the matter when time ran out. All the foregoing leads to where council will pick up tonight. The matter is divided into 4 active clauses, and the first active clause will be before council in its original form without the word not. Mayor will determine the order of speakers before the question is called. And when council has voted on the first active clause, they will move on to the second active clause for consideration, and it will be before them with the proposed amendment to effectively strike the exceptions to the PRCF's board's recommendations. In other words, all would be approved. Again, each member of council will be provided an opportunity in accordance with the procedure bylaw to speak to the proposed amendment. And that is where we're at. If council has any questions, I'm happy to respond.
All right, we will proceed. Thank you very much. And if we sway away from the procedure bylaw that you just indicated, please bring us back online.
Will do. Thank you.
So the first item, and I will do the unusual thing of being the first one to speak to it, has regard to the funding from the community forest of $250,000. And I brought this forward for two reasons. The first is respect. The board of our community forest have for the last 16 years looked at all of the individuals and organizations that have submitted. In this case, there have been several submissions from Foundry. In evaluating those submissions, the board consistently saw that this would be inappropriate time to fund Foundry. The second important point is to understand what is the cost associated with developing Foundry as laid out by Foundry to community forests and to the public. Foundry hired a Kelowna firm to give them a Class 4 estimate on the cost of renovating the facility so it could be used from Foundry. That estimate was over $6.6 million without tax consideration. Anybody who knows anything about Class 4 estimates knows that at best, they come in 20 or 30% higher and often can come in 100% higher. And just look at the initial Class 4 estimate of our waste treatment facility. I believe Councillor Southcott at one point was quite disturbed that it had reached 60 million. So in essence, what Foundry wants to do is to raise somewhere between $6 and $9 million to renovate a facility that it does not own. In contrast, if you look at Campbell River, where the John Howard Society did a major renovation, they did it on a building which they owned. So if you look at their financial statements, since they did that renovation, you could see that they've accumulated significant asset value, which has allowed them to do many more things because it's a lot easier to get funding when you have good, solid financial statements. So in a nutshell, I think that we should respect what community forests recommend, and we should simply wait until Foundry has the money that would make it realistic that they would be able to proceed. And at that point, the community forest knows that that money will actually be used rather than sitting in an account, which means that other community organizations will not have the opportunities that they would like. So we'll start with Councillor Almeida and then work around.
Thank you. Interesting food for thought. I don't believe I'm ready yet to vote against this, vote for this motion. Oh, sorry. Vote against this motion. So I still think I'm in favor of the original motion as it was before.
Councilor Arston, do you have any comments, questions?
Council appointed me as liaison to Foundry, which means that I sit on what was called the anchor table, and the anchor table has been combined with the leadership table, I believe it's called. And so I get to learn about Foundry, what they've been up to, how they're working, the partners that are involved, tour space, and get to know their work. I wanted to highlight a couple of things that they shared with council, just for to have on the record of a council meeting and recording, because I know that there's lots of information being shared about Foundry and community, and I want to make sure that Foundry can be heard from directly. And so just a couple of items. Youth and Family was selected as a host agency for Foundry Cathette due to its long-standing commitment to youth mental health services. They were asked to step forward as a host agency when Foundry BC released an expression of interest. Municipal support for other Foundry centers has been crucial, taking various forms, such as providing land, funding co-located youth centers, and advocating for community safety improvements. Youth and Family has been operating in the region for almost 30 years, has a strong reputation for its programs and services for youth and families. The organization was chosen as the host agency following a rigorous review process by Foundry Central Office. My computer wants to restart. I have to tell it to not. And the fundraising and support, they have a comprehensive fundraising plan with clearly defined milestones and funding targets. The project has over $3 million in funding requests currently in progress. And I wanted to share the architect and the designer who are deeply involved in this project. The designer actually was involved even before Foundry was named as Foundry, was involved in designing and operating the first two foundries in the province, deeply involved in a staged fundraising process like this, where not all of the money is raised before work starts, is the model that foundries use. And so the support of Foundry BC, the provincial agency that supports foundries across the province, has indicated that this is going as is to be expected. And I think it's important to note that we as the community forest and the city has never really been involved in granting to such a huge capital project. The scale of this project is beyond anything that we've been involved in before. So it feels different, and that's okay. But I think indicating municipal support for it early on is really important. I also wanted to address the respect for the Community Foundation Board. And, it is tricky. I think the council has had a long history of supporting the recommendations of the Community Forest Board. But it's our job not to, quote unquote, rubber stamp, but to consider the recommendations very seriously and weigh them and vote on them. And so when I looked at the finances and the opportunity costs, and the opportunity cost meaning that what community forest provides to our community also means that money can't go towards other things that ultimately we need to tax for. I'm looking at this holistically, and so I think, what am I, indirectly willing to tax for? And it's programs and services for youth. It's been really disappointing to see services for youth become so politicized in our community. To me, this is something that often a community gets behind and supports, because programs and services, and especially space for youth in this community, have been yearned for so long, and we have this opportunity, and I want to see the city to continue to support it. This is one option that we have. We don't need to give land. But we can make a financial contribution to the very substantial renovations that will take them decades into the future with their long-term lease. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. I do support this recommendation. I've worked with youth for off and on through my life. We have all sorts of problems in this community: homelessness, addictions, mental health, etc., and they're increasing. In fact, from a crisis standpoint, I think that this is a it's not just looming, it's an increasing crisis. Young people are challenged as much as any other sector of our population. Starting, I think it was about 20, 25 years ago, Iceland looked at exactly what we've got right now and questioned what to do about it. They came upon athletic programs and programs exactly like Foundry. And they spent the money and did that. Then, about 10 years later, they looked back at the economics or the financial outcome of that, and they found that all the money that had been spent, like this program, on this program, it turned out that the overall cost to society was much less than had that money been spent on addictions, mental health programs to fix problems that this is designed to prevent. I have believed in prevention. There's this old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think that that's just wisdom we all believe in. And that's what this is about. So that's why I support it. Those programs went through Europe as well. We're behind. Unfortunately, we maybe haven't had to spend this kind of money yet, but kids have been, and young people have been suffering for a long time increasingly. And they don't have much of a voice. There's not that many young people here. There are some, and it's awesome. Yeah, like my son was. But anyway, that's what we want to have happen. And we do have sports in this town, but we don't have this. This is a worthwhile investment. It is prevention. I totally support that.
Councillor Dowd, do you have comments, questions?
I do, and I notice that the rumble from the crowd is getting longer and louder with each speaker. It'd be nice to be able to hear what the speakers around the table are saying. So if you would give us the pleasure of doing that, I would appreciate that. Oh, well, I just want to talk about what we have in front of us. If we pass the motion that's in front of us on the screen, that will be council continuing to do what we previously decided on this issue of Foundry, which is granting them $250,000 for the Foundry application 285 to the community forest. Okay? $6 million is not a dauntingly huge project from my point of view. Been involved in many projects that are 100 and 1,000 times bigger than that. It's all about management. I share to some extent the mayor's concern. Money that the community forest has put into McLeod, for example, has gone into renovations and improvements in a building that's owned by the regional hospital district. If McLeod had been unsuccessful in getting all the money together and getting all of their renovations done, the asset with the money put in would have been the property of the regional hospital district. Foundry is not in that situation. They are leasing a building. If the project goes to a certain extent and the $250,000 is spent and there's not enough to finish it, eventually the project will go back to the owner of the building who is leasing it to Foundry. That's a risk. It's a risk that doesn't happen if the investment is happening to a property that the city owns, like the McLeod Recovery Center is owned by the Regional Hospital District, or like the Timberlane properties where the Scout Hall and the Cadet Hall and everything are on city property there, and we put money through the community forest into fixing those up. But I've heard what the community is telling us about Foundry, what many of the organizations have been writing to council to tell us about the need for it. And I understand that. I've balanced that need with what the community would be providing. And at the end of the day, the last time we had a vote on this, I was voting in favor of the $250,000 because I think there is money to do that in the Community Forest Reserve. And I'd be willing to put that forward in hopes of getting a positive project. It's not the only project that we could use. Okay? There are literally hundreds of health-related and human-related programs that we could have. We need more facilities for women at risk of violence. Where do they go? Where do you go to get shelter if you're a woman who's at risk of violence in this community? Where do you go if you want to get alcohol or drug treatment? Because I think McLeod is full right now. We could use more of that. All that requires money, and the decisions that we are making as a council is a decision on what to prioritize. Well, my choice last time we voted on this, and will be again this time, is to use $250,000 of community forest reserve money to put down to help Foundry get moving ahead. We had a tour. Council members had a tour of the new facility. We looked it all over. We talked about when the money, with the CAO, we talked about when money would be transferred. I believe no money would be transferred until a building permit is in place. That's a little ways down the road, and you have to have a lot better cost estimate. You have to have a better idea where we're going, and you have to have more of an idea that you will complete all of the funding that you need. So I'm willing to say yes to that. Part of the reason I voted on it, because I had made a motion at the same time, or we were discussing the other one, to include the other things that council had decided to remove from the community forest recommendations. I think we'll be talking about the other clause after this one. If this motion succeeds, I'll be in favor of reconsidering that motion to change it so we actually are doing all the things the community forest recommended. So that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm voting for. And I hope everybody understands at the end of the day, if you vote in favor of this, you're voting to donate $250,000 to Youth and Family for Foundry.
Councillor Elliott, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I'd like to speak to the motion, Your Worship.
Okay.
So just for folks who might not be aware, the last time we spoke about this was on the 4th of December regular council meeting, and there was a lot said there as well. The tour that Councillor Dowd mentioned, I also went on that tour. I learned some new things since the last time I talked about it. And one of those new things I learned was the lease agreement that was under negotiation at the time was nearly finished, and completion of that lease would trigger application for building permit, and they figured that would be February-ish. The architect that was hired was refining the design to downsize the costs so that they could fit within a lower budget than what their Class D was at. These were questions I asked on the tour. They were happy to answer for me. Some of the things that I may not have had a chance to mention in the last meeting were that having been following along and asking questions all along, the Foundry did come and do a delegation at the regional district as well. The questions about choice of place was talked about then, and we asked why they would not have chosen something they could own, and they said that was considered along with a number of locations throughout the community, and it looked like it would triple the cost, and that is part and parcel with the price of land and buildings and construction today. So many of the foundries, including the Campbell River one that was built in and established before the huge uptake in prices during the pandemic, would not have had to deal with the same prices as we are currently dealing with. And the price of doing a new build or buying another building was going to make the price prohibitive, like buying and then renovating. And it wasn't likely to be successful. So the avenue they chose for the lease was a good one for a number of reasons, including that the space is empty. The person who owns it was willing to put in upwards of $900,000 to $1 million to the building as well, knowing that they would, they do own the building, and there were things that were needed that they are going to cover. And that's a much bigger contribution than the one we have. The province is putting in 1.5 million toward that as well. So those are all very significant contributions. Many of the granting organizations that are on the books right now look at what the community is doing to support before they make their decisions. And so I think it's important that we do contribute to the local foundry to make it likely to be able to receive more funding from outside agencies and other foundations. So to try to delay till they've had all of these decisions made is to make it less likely for them to receive the funding from other agencies. Many funding agencies won't fund where the local community has not when it comes to grants and things like that. That's true of our Arts Council. It's true of many organizations that we give regular grants to, and they get the bulk of the rest of their money elsewhere because they get to leverage that money. So we regularly like to encourage the leveraging aspect of our funding so that we're getting as much outside or more as what we're putting in. We negate the possibility of doing that. The services for the Foundry are incredibly needed in our community. I have 5 kids, 5 grandkids. Bulk of my kids are grown now and have kids of their own. And it's always been a struggle to navigate services for children. We did a lot of traveling out of town to BC Hospital, BC Children's Hospital. Sometimes you have to put your child in institute or in health facilities that are outside of your community. It becomes extremely difficult to do that. We have no prevention for avoiding those kinds because the outpatient services aren't available for some mental health conditions for children in our community. It's almost entirely impossible to get psychiatrist appointments for your children inside of Powell River. So the facility would provide avenues for child psychiatrists to make appearances in Powell River rather than having everybody go to them. And so that travel is extremely hard for people who are young. The state of cost of housing in our community affects overall mental health of all young people who struggle to get ahead in our community, and services to provide advice and help in those regards would also be available through the Foundry. So I'm still in favor of the motion. I think the building permits are forthcoming very soon. The architect assures me we're right on schedule, and she has a lot of experience with foundries and building foundries and being part of foundry projects. And she didn't have concerns for their process or how it works. At this point, she's seen nothing but positive vibes coming for that. And I want to help our foundry become a reality. And I think there's a lot of people in our community that support that.
Councillor, please, can we hold the comments? Councillor Palm, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. Through the chair, I have a few comments. First of all, you'll notice the motion on the screen. I seconded that, the motion that the mayor had made 2 weeks ago. And I seconded it for a number of reasons. And there's been a lot more information over the last 2 weeks that has come forward. And I still support our Community Forest Board to the extent that I can. I have nothing but respect. And when Councillor Doubt tells you that $6 million is not a lot of money, I beg to differ. Because it took 20 years for our Community Forest Board working hard in our watershed to provide $31 million to help rebuild our community. Let's never lose sight of our Community Forest Board. Secondly, when we talk about cost, our mill site is down. We've lost over $2 million in annual taxation. That falls on the residents of our community. Let's not lose sight of the hard times our city is in financially. And we need to tighten our belt, not provide money for programs that according to our community forest board, are not ready to receive. I'm sorry, but that was the word we got from our board that did their due diligence. They work hard and they don't give money frivolously. For example, the climbing wall that's in the town site, hundreds of thousands of dollars went into a leased building. They had one concern, that if that went down, that climbing wall could be repurposed somewhere else. I'm not sure this is the same situation with repurposing what's going on at the site that's been chosen. And they weren't in favor of putting $250 at risk. They were fine with $125. I've talked to our community forest board. I know them well. They are not against supporting youth in this town, and I am certainly not against supporting youth in this town. I worked my first 40 years in this community starting in 1984 in the school district for School District 47, helping youth every single day of the week. That's what I do. And that's why I'm here, still serving the good people of this community. And I will do that until the day I'm finished. But when it comes to cost, the other thing that we found out this week is that at the Regional Hospital District Board, our two representatives took it upon themselves to make a motion for $1 million from the Regional District Hospital Board. That's funded 50% by the city, the taxpayers, through borrowing. That's your taxes, which would be a lot higher over a number of years, and the regional district. That has to work its way through the pipeline. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And here's the main important question on the table at the regional district. And that is, they have a safeguard in place that if they were to give that $800 to Foundry, it's not given to them until the Foundry is designated by the minister, Josie Osborne, who was elected when I was 17 years ago from Ucluelet. She has to authorize that that Foundry is going to become a healthcare facility for further funding. They're not there yet. That's why the Community Forest Board is not really excited about putting $250,000 up that could disappear. And it may not even come to reality. So we have to safeguard our public funds. And that's why this motion is important. I can live with this motion. I'm sorry, Mayor, but I can live with this motion because it's in the right direction to support youth, but with one condition. And that is it's tied to the Foundry being designated by that minister, Josie Osborne, as a healthcare facility. I will put my hand in the air right now and support that, because then those funds are not put at risk. That's what we have to safeguard. Your tax dollars. And
Okay. All right.
And, you know, the one thing at the end of the last meeting, the mayor asked an important question, and I've got to get to the bottom of it because he mentioned something about conflict of interest. And I don't like to go there, but I have to ask it in this particular case because when that question was asked of certain councillors that may be in conflict, I saw Councillor Elliott putting her hand in the air. She was going to speak to it. And I'm just wondering, Councillor Elliott, what were you going to say?
Yes, I'm just going to interrupt here, Councillor Palm. I think we're heading down a long path here.
Okay.
Maybe come back to that.
Disregard my question.
Okay.
But Mayor, if we can make an amendment to this that safeguards these funds by tying it to a healthcare facility designation, I'm all for it.
Thank you. So I've got a few additional comments. So I probably was the first council member to spend probably 50 hours doing an evaluation of Foundry in the province. As a result, I made a donation to Foundry. And the donation specifically was to allow them to hire an expert who could help them come up with a fundraising plan. So Foundry will remember the first time they came to council, I asked them if they had a fundraising plan. And they said no, but that when it was finished, they would send it to me. I've never received that fundraising plan. So as far as I know, they haven't actually put together strategic objectives into a fundraising plan. So that in itself raises a major concern. It boggles my mind that we're actually discussing the value of Foundry. Clearly, Foundry has significant value. But if they don't have a strategic plan that will allow this project to be finished, they will cause unbelievable long-term harm to the youth of Powell River. And that's why I'm saying, take a step back. If Ed Levy and others want to get together and form a fundraising campaign, so there's actually a hope that you can get $68 million in time to make this happen, that's great. But if you fail, you're going to have a very long-term impact on the youth of Powell River. Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that this, this recording, people will watch it and it will be reported in the news. I highly, highly recommend any reporting of this meeting to be fact-checked rather than stated verbatim, because I think we're obviously missing a voice of the Foundry at this meeting. A lot of us think we know what's going on, and we're sharing the best information that we have, and we are not the final sources of all that information. Please fact check. Thank you.
Yes, I'm just Councillor Armida, Councillor Southcott, no, Councillor Dowd, Councillor Isaac.
Thank you, Your Worship. Because it is a public recording and I don't want any confusion anywhere, I am not in any way, shape, or form in conflict with this project. I don't belong to that nonprofit. I don't stand to gain financially from this project at all. And I have no link to Foundry other than that I'm an advocate for all youth in our community. And so I'm not sure why the question ever came up in the first place. And if I did put my hand up, it was probably to answer the question just as I have now. So I just didn't want confusion about that happening. I didn't even realize people believe that of me. And there is no conflict for me in this project.
Okay.
And I have no idea why people would think that.
Okay, let's move on. We have Councillor Palm.
Sorry, Your Worship, I have to ask a question. You know, I've alluded to an amendment to what's on that screen. Corporate officer, am I allowed to make a friendly amendment?
Through the chair, Councillor Palm, you could make an amendment, certainly along the lines of where I think you're going with this, and I wouldn't term it necessarily a friendly amendment. It's just an amendment being proposed, and it will have to be voted upon and spoken to by all the other council members.
Yeah, so that's Walls. I would simply like to make an amendment that after the period there, we make the comma and say kids and family application subject to the Foundry being designated as a health care facility by the province of British Columbia.
Second that for discussion. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Elliott.
The reason that was part of the motion at the hospital district, because that's the legislation they operate under. It's not a legislation the city operates under and isn't entirely appropriate to our grant project. unless we specifically had made that a requirement before we did MICLAT or many of the other things that we've funded for health, which it is over at the hospital board. It's always been that way. That's the legislation they work under. I won't vote for this because I don't think it's entirely in order, and I don't think it's consistent with the approvals we've made in the past.
Any further comments before I call the vote on the amendment?
Yeah.
Just a second, Councillor
Sorry.
Palm, go to Councillor Doubt and then Councillor Palm.
I agree with Councillor Elliott's point on this. The regional, if you'd like to know why, may give you a chance to hear it.
Okay,
I'll wait until there's some quiet.
yeah, let's,
There's only one way that the regional hospital district can communicate funds that they raise through taxes. Their rules, their reason for existing is to support healthcare facilities, and only that. That's why I believe when I was watching the regional hospital district minutes in the meeting that was taking place, they made the motion that they would provide this $800,000, not $1 million, $800,000, provided that the minister declared Foundry and Powell River a healthcare facility. It's required by their legislation, required by who they are. Those requirements don't apply to the city. The city's talking about a far less amount of money, $250,000, and I don't think we should be tying it to other levels of government.
Councillor Palm.
Yes, Your Worship. The reason for my amendment is very simple. Even though it's not tied to the hospital board and what they do over there, this is simply a safeguard to make sure that those $250,000 that we would donate through our community forest have a safeguard and just don't disappear if they don't get their designation or you can't raise the funds. There are so many things in terms of the 9 million that are required to make this facility work that we do not know at this point in time. It's that simple. Thank you, Your Worship.
Great. Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. CFO is online. Okay. Maybe the CFO has the answer to this question, but correct me if I'm wrong, for community forest projects, are funds not issued after projects are completed? Or at least not in advance of processing happening?
Through the chair, my understanding is that they would be subject to an agreement as to when the funds would be provided.
Thank you.
Question.
Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know who it should go to, but when we're administering or making decisions about funding programs or any kind of programs, and we have policies and so forth in effect, would not adding a criteria at the end of the process be considered administratively difficult, or is there a risk attached to that? Or do we not have the right people here to answer that question?
Through your worship, I think it depends on the circumstances. As a general rule, council should follow their policies. They don't necessarily have to always follow their policies, and over the years, numerable councils have not followed their policies, but there's a reason why they're in place, and it's best practice to follow them. We'd have to see about the individual. I mean, that's a bit of a broad question. If we're very specific about this and the guidelines that are in place, it's a mix of policy from the city of Powell River, as well as the guidelines through the Powell River Community Forest. So it's a bit of a mix.
So my last comment is, and this comes from having probably raised $30 million for a variety of community organizations over the years. When I studied Foundry, specifically, it was to assist youth 12 to 24 who had mental health challenges. And so if I was out raising money and I could say that this program has been endorsed through the health hospital organization in Powell River, that would eliminate a lot of questions from potential funders. So I'm in support of this amendment because I think it would facilitate the significant fundraising challenge that our local Foundry has. Any additional? Councillor Palm.
Last comment, Your Worship, in regards to the amendment, and that is, with this amendment, a very important message is sent to the minister responsible for granting the Foundry as a healthcare facility in combination with our hospital board that is put funding up, which is still working along that same line. So this just adds to the initiative for the minister to grant such to the Foundry, which I'm sure everybody here representing the Foundry wants, because it will help you raise a great deal more in terms of funding. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, we have a amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Look at, you really don't want me to clear the chamber, right? You've come out, you want to listen, okay? And subsequently, after you've listened, you can meet in the driveway, whatever, and provide comment. But I will clear. And who said that? Stand up, please.
Stand up, Ted.
Would you leave, please? Would you escort him out? You. Okay, we're going to recess for 5 minutes, and I'm asking that you not come back in after the 5 minutes. Okay? Okay. Okay, let's reconvene. Okay, I'm going to ask our corporate officer to indicate where were we before we called.
Mr. Mayor and Council, the vote was called on the amendment, and it was defeated 5-2, and then a recess was called. So
Thank you very
we're
much.
back to the motion without the amendment.
Okay, could you repeat what you just said? It wasn't coming through very clearly. Just repeat where we
Can't
were.
hear you.
Sorry, to repeat, the motion on the amendment was defeated 5-2. And so we're back to the main motion, as you see on the screen, with no amendment.
Thank you. So I'm going to call the main motion. All in favor? Opposed? Passes. So we'll now move to the next motion. And do we have it on the screen so that everybody can see it? Okay, the motion is in front. Let's start with any questions. I'm sorry, I'm going to go through the same process. Councilor Armida?
Just for clarification, Mayor, your intent here is to approve all the grants that the community force recommended in November. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct.
So further for clarification for that, because what was in the notice of motion before didn't include I believe it was 195,000 that MICLAT had recommended for some cost overruns on their project. So I'm curious, I guess, in your intent, is that to include the 195 now, or is it still your goal to not? Because I believe what's on the screen would include the 195 to MICLAT.
I can't see what you're talking about.
Okay, maybe I've misread my notes. Okay, sorry.
Councilor Isaacson.
Thank you. So just for clarity, I know you provided a good, through the mayor to staff, you provided a good overview at the beginning, but it's been a while. So we are, the lines that are crossed out there, we are now on, like we're voting on the amendment to cross all of those out first.
Through the mayor, that's correct.
Okay, so we're voting on the amendment to cross all of those out. And then we would go to the main motion. Yeah. All right. Okay, so are we talking about questions right now? Or are we in debate?
Any
We're in
questions?
debate. I don't have questions. I'm ready to get into debate when you want to do debate.
So, Southcott, any questions? All right. One more comment like that, and I'm clearing the whole council chamber. You have to learn some respect because you expect respect. So I want to see reciprocity here. This is the last opportunity you have to stay in the council tonight. Councilor Southcott. Councilor Doubt.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand the way we're dealing with this. So I believe, and I'm going to ask the corporate officer, if we vote in favor of this motion, does that mean that council will approve all of the grants included in the BC Forest recommendation? or the community forest recommendation.
You'll,
I think that's what it means. I want to confirm that that's the truth.
Through the chair, yes, Councillor Doubt, that is correct. You're voting on the motion to amend, which would strike out all of those exceptions and simply leave remaining all of the recommendations from the Community Forest Board.
Okay, I think you added an extra word in there, but I think we've got a motion. We're either going to vote in favor or opposed. It's not an amendment. It is a motion that council approve all the grants included in the community forest recommendation.
Sorry, through the mayor, Councillor Doubt, this is a motion to amend. It's simply being shown on the screen in this particular manner so that you see what is left. If you pass the motion to amend, you're simply left with the council approve all the grants included in the community forest recommendation. So you are voting on an amendment to the second active clause.
Councillor Lilly, you have any questions, comments?
I could do debate if we're in questions. I think I'm clear now. The two councillors that have asked this question, I've got a couple answers to it. So I think I understand the next vote is to vote on the amendment.
Tom?
Yes, thank you. Just want to make the point that during the community forest deliberations and the working groups deliberations on all of these items, the Community Forest Board recommended all of these. They did not recommend at that time the Foundry. The Foundry is now passed. Congratulations. But these good people that run all of these nonprofits need our support. So if I vote in favor of this, all of those groups will get their funding, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Bonita, okay. Councillor Isaacson?
Yeah, if we're in debate now, I have some comments on the amendment. So to bring us back to the process of how we got here, earlier in the summer, the Community Forest Board was looking for direction from council and the types of priorities we wanted to see in some of the recommendations and applications that came forward to us for recommendations. And we provided a few, including affordable housing, health and recreation opportunities for youth, reconciliation, and healthcare, health facilities. And so when we shared that with that passed at council, when the recommendations came back, there were some that didn't align with that request from council to the Community Forest Board. And so some of these items, when we went through discussion, ended up being removed. I can't speak to everybody else's rationale, but for me, it was getting back to the core of what we asked the Community Forest Board when it came to priorities. There are also a couple in there that were removed for other reasons. The Cycling Association, the Community Forest, indicated that they thought that they could do some of that work and didn't necessarily need to be granted. It could come out of core community forest operations itself. And Friends of Cathet, while a very worthwhile cause, actually contravenes our policy. It is about operations. And if we are granting for operations and granting for food or for clothing for organizations, there's a whole swath of organizations that should have applied for funding that haven't because they didn't think that they were eligible. And Friends of Cathet, while a worthwhile endeavor, doesn't align with the policy. And so there was more than a few reasons that we removed some of these grants. And I would prefer to stick with that to align with the priorities that Community Forest asked for and we provided to them. And also to align ourselves with Community Forest saying that they would be willing to take on the work for the Cycling Association. They could do that in their operations, and to align us with our policy of what these projects are, what this funding is meant to grant for, which is generally like things as opposed like capital investments as opposed to more operational expenses and such. So as a whole, I don't support this amendment. I would get closer to supporting this amendment if Friends of Cathet and Cycling Association were put back on as exceptions, but we'll see where council takes the discussion.
Thank you, Worship. 6 of these organizations at least are grant recipients in the past, not so distant past. There are various reasons, and we discussed this at length in previous meetings, for denying. My own global reason is that it's the same reason as been expressed by at least Councillor Palm, if not more of us, and that is concern for our fiscal situation right now. There are other sources of money for some of these, and there are a whole bunch of reasons why these specific organizations were selected to be excluded. And that's as far as I'm going to go with this.
Yeah, I'm just going to say I am in favor of this amendment. It's actually the same amendment I tried to make at the previous meeting. I think when the Community Forest Board recommended that we should donate funds from the Community Forest Board to these organizations, I thought we should respect their recommendations. You look at them, the Friends of Cassette, other ones are actually quite small amounts of money compared even to what's being provided for the Foundry, and they contribute excellent projects for the community, and all of them you'll see are used to support the work of volunteers in the community. They're all seed money, they're all providing enough to get a project beginning, but not complete it. What's needed to complete the projects are the volunteers. And what encourages them to go is the fact that they are provided by the city with some money to start their project along, pay for tools, pay for the things they absolutely have to buy so that the volunteers can contribute to their community. And that's what I find is the most important thing about this community, is the willingness of people to stand up and work for the community and for the other people in the community out of selflessness. And I think supporting people with these grants is a key part of what we do in our community. It's not going to break the bank. We've got money in the Community Forest Reserve that we can use, and hopefully we can go ahead.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I've been working really, really hard on community forests and updating a lot of things and working together with the community forest. I've attended as many of the board meetings as I've been available for. Sometimes I'm in conflict with other meetings, but for the most part, I've been there. Some of these projects on this list were indeed taken out for very legitimate reasons. I love them all. I want to provide money to them all, but they don't all meet our criteria for this particular intake. We went to the trouble of having many meetings and coming up with criteria for this intake. And as much as I'd like to do that, if we make motions for what we're doing and then don't follow it, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So if we're going to come up with criteria, we should follow our own criteria. So the motions that we made in November, is that right? As a result of the meetings with the working group, the working group recommended the following: that council set a maximum for allocation for nonprofit grants of $640,000, and that Powell River Community Forest Working Group recommended that council confirm their priorities for the Powell River Community Forest Nonprofit Grant Program. And so council did exactly that. They set the maximum for fall allocation as per the recommendation from the working group at $640,000. And they also confirmed their current priorities for the Powell River Community Forest Nonprofit Grant Program are for health-related facilities, affordable housing, recreation, culture, and social goals for youth and reconciliation. And that was the priorities that council had decided should be used as a screening tool for recommendations and for what we were prepared to put grants out for that particular intake. The Friends of the Cathette already didn't meet our criteria for capital type projects. And so we're not really interested in expanding our program to not capital because that opens a door, and it's also not been fair to all of the other organizations that could use funding like the food bank and whatnot to just do one-offs like that. You need to stick to your process, otherwise you're being unfair to the community at large. There's people telling me to shut up, Mayor.
Could you continue, please?
It's just hard because it's, anyway. So the Cassette Cycling Association, if you go back to the 4th of December meeting, or the committee of the whole before that rather, when the president of the community forest group, or sorry, board was here presenting his recommendations, he specifically said that one could definitely be done by the community forest through operations. And I asked him, well, what is your preference? Is it your preference for us to do a grant? Or is it your preference for you to do it yourself? Because I'd like to know. He said it was their preference to do it themselves. And so he would be happy to, he said the only reason he put it on the list was if council preferred to take credit for that, then he wanted to give them the opportunity to do that. It was going to get done regardless. And so that was the reason that was on the list. Many of the others that came off the list are ones that were just given a grant in the spring or didn't meet the criteria that we spelled out for this particular grant intake. So while I'd like to approve most of those, I believe the trail one is going forward anyway, because that's what the community forest told me. They did not meet the criteria that we, the council, before we even knew what the applications were going to be, we made criteria for that particular intake. And so I think that it behooves us to stick to our own criteria that we put forward at a prior meeting to narrow down the focus of the grant program for this particular intake. So unfortunately, we kind of caused this by creating criteria that we should be following. Otherwise, what is the point of us being in contravention of previous motions unless we're also reconsidering that motion for the criteria? I don't want to second guess that work that we've already got done in order to narrow things down. I don't think that's a step forward in financial management.
Made this point several times. Do you have any new points you'd like to make?
Step forward in financial management. Thank you.
Do you have any?
Yes, Your Worship, I have a couple of responses to what was said here. First of all, in regards to Councillor Isaacson referring to policy and regarding these items on our screen. Well, she brought forward the policy not too long ago. All of those items have been supported for a number of years in our community by the Community Forest Board. The only two new items on that screen are Kelly Creek Church, which I don't believe I've seen before, and we've supported other churches in our community. This is in the regional district. And the other one is the Gillies Bay Tennis Court on Texada, and we have supported other tennis courts south of town and our own through the Community Forest Board. So to say that these don't fit the criteria is a falsehood. They certainly fit the community forest criteria that we have supported for 17 or 20 years, I should say. So first of all, that one. And then Councillor Southcott speaking out of both sides of his mouth today.
Point of order, Chair.
Saying
Yes,
he's
I'm out.
worried about costs.
Councillor Palm.
Yeah, well, no.
Just quiet. Now, you've made a derogatory comment about Councillor Southcott. Would you please either apologize or leave the council meeting? All right.
Sorry.
Everybody that's booed, get out. Is our RCMP here to assist them? We'll get them back. If you've got any respect, all of you that booed will leave now.
Worship,
Obviously,
I will officially
quiet.
apologize so that we
Okay.
can carry on.
Obviously, there's no respect of anybody in this audience, so when the RCMP comes, all of you will be removed. Disgusting. Great, Councillor Palm.
Okay. So I think I've finished, Your Worship. I think I've said enough to support our community force with respect.
Thank you. So my comment is, which is opposed to Councillor Elliott and Councillor Isaacson, I believe all of these meet the criteria which we discussed. Having somebody interpret something to support where they want to go and suggest that Gillis Bay tennis courts are not promoting social activity and social wellness. To me, that's cannot accept that. So I'm in support of this. So any further comment before I call? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. We'll now go to
Main motion.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Main motion.
all in favor of the,
Sorry, Mr.
we
Mayor.
want to get it on the screen.
Corporate officer wants your attention.
Yes.
Or the amendment motion has passed, but now you need to call the main motion as amended.
Thank you. Any discussion on the main motion as amended? All in favor of the main motion as amended? Opposed? Passes. Thank you. We will now move to
We have to decide whether we're going to continue past 9 first.
is there a consensus that we would like a 3-minute break? Council? Anybody opposed to a 3-minute break? This will give the RCMP time to clear most of the room.
Just a comment, Your Worship. I just have a comment, and that is that the 3 minutes break
to watch the proceedings can go home, go to the bar, get the television lined up, whatever. It's just disgusting that you have no respect for what is simply a matter of good governance.
Here to scooch down a little bit.
Yes.
Is the store closing?
Sure, yeah, it's not closed.
Keep it open. So, Peter, would you tell me where we're at the moment?
Are we, we're gonna try to put this up.
Yeah.
Okay. You good?
Yeah, it's just council chambers, so he doesn't have that camera on.
Although we're gonna need the dollar now.
Yeah, that's bigger. Can you hear us, Greg?
Yeah.
Maybe you can't hear us because there's stuff going on. Greg can't hear us. So you can't hear us speaking at all? Not unmuted up here. Do you have to turn it on the Crestron?
Muted.
Yeah.
Better microphone, does that need to be turned on?
No, it goes. Yeah, on the table, yeah, it's a, yep. Yeah, it's not crossed off. Can you hear us now? Testing, can you hear us, Greg? Oh. Yeah, okay. Okay. All right, council, yeah, it's working now, so they can hear us downstairs. It's recording? And it's recording, that's what, yeah.
So where we're at. You summarize where we're at and then,
So we have the amendment for the second active clause passed, and then the main motion as amended passed. We're now at the third active clause that council directs staff to amend City of Powell River 2025 to 2029 financial plan bylaw 2751-2025 to increase the project budget for City of Powell River Project 430 Logger Sports Arena by the amount of $30,000 and to increase the project budget for City of Powell River Project 435 Seawalk Repair Project by the amount of $180,000, with the increases funded by the Powell River Community Forest Reserve Fund.
thank you. Councilor Elliott had two procedural questions and then we'll go to Councilor Doubt.
So my first procedural question is, given that our current motions on the floor that have passed exceed the amount we previously had moved, do we need to rescind our previous motion to expend no more than $650,000?
It's in the final motion.
I'm just wondering, we have to rescind that one. You're referring to a motion that was made at a previous meeting as opposed to the new dollar value that's in this meeting that will be amended to show the new stuff? Yeah, my question is whether we need to rescind that motion in order to be square. I don't know.
This is all a reconsideration.
No, this other one was done way back in September or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, my first thoughts, and Peter might have more to this, is, is it fettering the discretion of you to make further amendments? In theory, if you make a motion as a group, you should follow it. But if further information comes forward and you guys as council decide to do a new motion with a new dollar amount in it, I would say that is your prerogative. And I don't know if you would actually have to go back and rescind the motion. Going back and rescinding every motion that was contrary to a new motion report doesn't make any sense. So that's that, unless that's
what's happened in my past when we come with the new information and we need to change something. We rescinded the previous one and made a new one. I'm just wondering if that's what we have to do. I'm not against it. I'm just.
I would say that it's not necessary.
I think I would agree with that through the mayor. Effectively the motions that you just made and the resolutions that you just made effectively overwrite what you previously cited. And that happens sometimes with bylaws. You can end up amending bylaw and it overwrites what was previously in the bylaw or in another bylaw. And it's just a question of precedence. And so this motion, this resolution that you've now passed will take precedence over the earlier resolution with respect to the cap that you put on. Ideally, yes, if timing is good and you're able to rescind a previous motion so that you can expand what you want to do, that's the best case scenario. But I'd say that you could proceed still the manner you have without having to go back and rescind, which I think would entail a bit more procedure. So.
The second procedural question is the next motion on the docket. I don't think, was it intended to reconsider that too, because it's separate from the grant programs? We did it at the same time, but it's a separate motion, separate from the grant programs. Was it your intention to also reconsider the projects for the city?
As the corporate officer, we would discuss this with.
So it's not really a question of the mayor's intent with the reconsideration, because the motion that was moved at the December 4th meeting was it moved all four clauses at once. It was one motion that moved all of them. There was a subsequent amendment proposed that was voted on and not passed with respect to some of the board's recommendations. But it was moved as one, and that's why there's no choice from there. It's now been subdivided or divided, and so if you have no intent to reconsider this, you would just simply call the question. But I would suggest providing an opportunity for members of council to speak prior to doing so.
Thank you so much. I love.
Did you have any further? Yes, this is a good example of the danger that we can get into when we pass motions with 5 different ideas in them all at once. In order to avoid stuff like this, probably better off to pass the ideas one at a time instead of trying to pass 4 at a time, because it's hard to unwind. But I think we all talked about all of these issues before, about the longer sports, about CWAP, and the additional money it's going to take. I would like to move that motion. I think it's a good idea because water sports and the CWAP, for example, are important projects. That was something. I get tons of questions from.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been seconded. Any further discussion before I call? All in favor? Opposed? Passed unanimously. Go on to the final board. Yes.
Just a question through Mayor to staff. Oh, it's been updated, I think. Never mind. Okay, there's a new amount that incorporates the changes that Yes, okay.
Sure. I'm just acknowledging the fact that I don't see our chief financial officer on here too.
Okay.
Just noticing that,
Okay.
but the amount has been updated and we're assuming the math is correct. But he would be a good, if he's not on there, I can catch him though, sorry.
Somebody wish to put a motion? So, seconded by? Okay, any further discussion before I call the motion? All in favor? Passes unanimously. Good. We'll now go to what used to be 12.2, which was the name change postponement. And the motion is the council postpone any further action regarding the request to change the name of the city of Powell River. The first regular council meeting in November 26th after the inaugural meeting. And so again, we'll go around the table and we'll start with Mr. Palm and come this way. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, Your Worship, just a couple of comments, and that is seeing this motion that where we are in the process, knowing full well that a lot of education is taking place in this regard, and knowing full well that the Wahhanan people have expressed their opinion many times that they do not want to see an opinion poll because of the outcome that may result, which would only disrupt things more and divide us more in our community. I support this motion wholeheartedly and attempt to calm the waters until next council can deal with it. And then if they so choose, they can put a strong education program forward. And there we go.
That's what it is.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's safe to say none of us, all of us would agree that we not made the progress on this matter like we intended 3 years ago when we started deliberating our strategic priorities. We've now got to a position staff-wise where we have a little bit more capacity or getting to more capacity, but you know, we also know that there's an election in 9 months' time or 8 months' time. So we're not going to make a ton of progress on this matter. My concern with passing this is that it prevents us from even making a nudge on something as simple as getting a report or of some kind that could then benefit the future council. I can understand maybe that's all we get, and maybe we don't even get that far. But that would be my concern with this was it would prevent us from even having a something to move it forward versus just passing it over to whoever takes over the council in 9 months' time.
Okay. What to do? Should I follow on the other 2 people asking questions that turned out to be debate? Or should I actually ask a question? I'm going to take the risk of asking a question and trying to give my opinions on it. Question is, what does this mean? It says, council postpone any further action regarding the request to change the bill after 2026 election. So, is that a reconsideration of council's strategic priority to take significant action towards a name change and having a public opinion poll in 2026? Will it negate that? Reconsideration of that? Or is it just simply to do nothing? And that means we don't do anything between now and 2026. We don't do anything about the opinion poll. I'd like to know what they, yeah, we're all on top of this. What have we decided to do? Looking at the CAO and the corporate.
Are you looking at me? Okay, I thought you were asking.
You know, if I was making reconsideration motion, I'd write down what I want to do.
Okay, I thought you were asking the mayor since it was his motion.
Mayor, and answer, I'd like to hear that one.
All right, the answer is I had discussions with staff about the requirement it would take to put together a meaningful public opinion poll before the election. And the consensus was we have many other priorities, and that it didn't seem that there would be adequate time and resources in order to do this. So that was my rationale for bringing this forward.
I didn't really hear an answer. I think what you're saying is you don't think there's time to do anything between now and 2026. You don't want to have the public opinion poll with the 2026 election. You don't want to take any action between now and then. Am I right about that?
From a staff perspective, if this motion was to move forward, what it would mean is that we wouldn't move forward on drafting the report, doing the work in title, are able to move this forward. Whether it actually moved forward or not would be up to council, but the next steps, as outlined when this came forward in the fall, was we had to wait until we had a replacement for Callie's position on board, which is Susan, and she's come on board. And then what would have happened would have been a report from council saying, if we do anything, this is what we can do. But the chances of us being able again to do a fulsome process as was envisioned, I believe, back when council started this process is very limited. So again, if this motion is passed and it says council postpone any further action, as CAO, I would say put down our pens on this one. Let's wait till after the election before doing any more work on this.
Tell you what I think of your idea now. I don't know what the idea is. I think we made a decision as part of our strategic priorities. We made it very late, but we made a strategic decision to try to do something about the name change and to have an opinion poll 2026 election. We did that after a lot of discussion. After about 3 years, 2 or 3 years of discussion about what our priorities should be as a council, when we came up with a modified idea. And then we came down and we announced to everybody that this was one of our priorities. Didn't explain the timetable or what we were going to do. We just said, this is our priority. And we heard all kinds of stuff from people who have been campaigning and getting petitions for a vote were angry at us because they thought that we would do something inappropriate. I heard the Council at Ratepayer Association meeting, the council was planning to have an opinion poll and then not tell people what the results were, so that nothing would happen. It was much more interesting. But to me, it was surprising for me was how angry the people that wanted the vote after the 26 election were. The council said we were going to try to have. The other thing that surprised me is all the other people who actually wanted name change saying, can't do this. You can't do it by having a opinion poll, because that's asking the wrong people. But some of the people who were saying you can't have an opinion poll are the ones that are asking councils could they change the name. To me, the logic there is don't ask all the people in Falmouth they think, just ask these 7. I don't know how an opinion poll of the entire city could be less valid than the opinion poll of 7 council. But that's just my opinion. I think we've done nothing on the idea that they changed. It's a gesture that is still bothering the community. You can tell I don't know how many people in the room downstairs were there for energy forest stuff, or whether they were there to argue against Foundry, or whether they were against whatever was doing name change, because these people being against whatever we do. Actually, I would like to honor the request that the planning gave and try to think about what the city could do. I can think of some things we could do. We could have some kind of respectful dialogue. You know, Rob Councillor Fuscott tried to do that with a roundtable meeting, which was, I thought, successful, but again, people were saying, well, it's one side of the issue, getting together and talking to themselves. So a few disagreements here and there, and but different ways you can do that. And you can, one idea that came up recently was talking to a bunch of people, was to actually have one or more debates, not town hall meetings where people get together and yell at each other, but debates where you get three people on one side, people on the other side, lay out the facts, question each other's back, discussion. Back again 2 weeks later, maybe with some different people, but at least we try to do something and move it forward. And then we're missing an opportunity to bring the community together if we don't try to do something. We just sit around. Before, along the lines of early in the discussion, I picked up from somewhere that we would have to have some kind of demonstration for the provincial government. If the city actually wanted to change its name, we'd have to have some indication from the public. A lot of people have said, well, that would be a referendum. Opinion poll or something. Latest information that we can't share with anybody that I've managed to glean is that you just have to make the provincial government happy. That's what everybody in town wants. And I don't know how you do that without even having any kind of discussion, any kind of vote. I'm in favor of going ahead, but leaving the priority as the priority is, trying to do what we can, seeing if we actually can create something by October 6th. We know it's going to, I know it's going to be an election issue. Some people hope it's going to go away if we don't do anything. I don't think that's, but we do not.
So before we move to the next question, it's 26 minutes to 10. We have items left. If it's 5 minutes to 10 and we still have items left, we then have a ask for unanimous motion to continue on.
Mr. Mayor, the procedure bylaw states that if we don't have a council or a closed meeting, then the council meeting starts at 7 and can go until 10:30 without any motion to extend.
Thank you. Councilor. Okay, do you have a comment, question?
I do, yeah. So I think right at this point in time, we had a motion, as our CEO mentioned, to ask staff for a report that would explain what the recommendations were for an engagement process and leading up to an opinion poll, what that would take, budget, all the other things, how much time we would need. And I'm still in favor of receiving that report. So my preference would be, and I also want to point out that I agree with the mayor that it's unlikely that we can do an opinion poll after that selection due to the fact that we haven't done the engagement and set it up properly, and we're late in the game now. So I totally agree with them there. I know that the issue's not going away. I would like to receive the report, and so my preference would be to consider this or postpone this until we've received that report and then consider it at that time. So that would be my preference.
Sorry, through the chair, just for clarity, there is no motion to bring forward a report. There was a motion brought forward when this item came up to bring a report forward, which was defeated. And the only thing was I said in terms of next steps, what staff would be working toward with the report, but there is no actual motion on the books for a report to be done. There was a motion made to have the report done, but it was defeated, just for clarity.
Oh, I didn't remember that, but I thought we had a motion to amend or to bring a report forward along with something else, and then it got changed to, it got defeated, and then we had another motion after that, just for the report. But that's my apologies.
Yeah.
I would prefer a motion to receive a report, actually, but I'd love to postpone this until we have some advice from staff about timelines, resources, and everything in order to proceed. And once we have the information we need to consider this question, I think it would be better timed at that time.
Thank you, Mayor. So I share agreement with a lot of my colleagues on council here in a lot of different ways. I think that if it's going to be an election issue, whether or not, no matter what happens, the issue and the opportunity is not going away. But I, one, firmly believe that we don't have enough time to do the proper engagement Councilor Pom spoke to get to the place where we have an opinion poll. And also that would lead to a pretty horrible election cycle. Were there to be some sort of opinion poll, I would love for it to not be tied to an election cycle, because I think, especially without that robust engagement, it's going to be pretty hurtful, I think, for our community to do that. And so I that's one of the things on my mind. I support the mayor's motion. And also, I'm wondering if we could still tie in there the opportunity to respect the motion and not contravene it, in that council doesn't do any action. We don't take any vote, except perhaps that in this time, staff can prepare a report, but that report doesn't get delivered until perhaps the next council or before council, but we don't do anything on it until after that first regular council meeting of November. So I did check in with staff about an amendment that would be aligned with the original motion and its intent to postpone council to have any further action, but still provide staff direction to limit their actions to preparing a report on a potential framework for engagement strategy. So the amendment that I'm going to offer is that after the that clause, that subject staff being directed to limit their actions to preparing a report on a potential framework for an engagement strategy, because no matter what happens next, that is the next step. We need a report on what the ideas Councillor Dowd shared. These are all fantastic ideas. You need some direction and some professional recommendations on what that engagement could look like, so that a council, whether it's this council or the next one, can make some decisions on how much money to spend, whether they want to do it at all, which direction that they want to take. So, so my amendment to add those. Well, actually, now I'm speaking to the amendment without it being seconded. I apologize, Mayor. That's my intention. That to respect the original intent of the mayor's motion, and that council will postpone any further action, but that staff are able to spend time and are being directed to prepare a report on a potential framework for engagement strategy. And I'm hoping that's a way to kind of do two things. We make some progress, but we're not voting on that progress. Just staff can start the work that maybe we had been hoping for a couple of years ago. So that's my intention with this amendment.
So Mia and then Doug.
Thank you. This amendment falls in line with my thought process. I can recognize where we don't have enough time or capacity to get to an opinion poll. I think we could have probably agreed to that a year ago. This at least would prevent the future council from having to start at ground zero, so to speak, and give them and we'd still have to, as the CAO said, we'd still have to request a report, but at least it gives us a position to give a little bit of momentum to whoever sits at the council table after October.
Just for clarity, to our corporate officer, is it clear that Councillor Isaacson put forward an amendment? Council Amita has seconded that amendment. Let's go over that right now.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you. Councillor Doug.
Well, my concern with this amendment is Councillor Isaacson thinks it says what it actually says. Says that if subject to, if staff is directed to limit their action. and council will postpone it. It doesn't direct staff to write a report. All it says is if staff writes a report,
Where's the if?
council will postpone this. And I'm not sure that's what council I
Through our corporate office.
To Councillor Doubt's point, you could simply put another motion on the floor to subsequently, if this passes, it is subsequently direct staff to do that.
and maybe it will. Maybe this will pass, and maybe the next one will pass, but maybe not.
Okay, so just before, I like this amendment, and I think that any council initiatives is going to significantly again increase divisiveness in our community. So I support this. Yes, Councillor. And then Bob.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering if it would be more clear if it just said subject to staff being directed to prepare a report on rather than limit their actions, because I'm wondering if that could be interpreted to limit part of their regular business around answering questions and dealing with the public. And I'm not sure that our intentions would be limit beyond what they would normally do. So my question is whether limiting their actions is maybe not quite what we wanted to say, but rather that we want to be able to get the subject to staff being directed to prepare a report on a potential framework for an engagement strategy. Council postpone any further action regard. So that would be a friendly amendment, I think.
There are no friendly amendment. Everyone has to be by the corporate office saying so that twice the many people said friendly amendments.
To remove.
No friendly.
I don't think you can amend amendments.
Yeah, there can be a sub-amendment. One sub-amendment.
To remove, limit their actions and change preparing a report to prepare a report.
Let's bring that up. And Councillor Pond.
Okay. Thank you, through the chair. Just waiting to see what this new amendment actually says. Yeah, so I'm not going to be voting in favor of this new amendment. I like the previous one because I'm listening to staff. And all of our staff, most of them in this room are new. And this is the first time they're actually dealing with this subject. We have had ministry people in our midst prior to this telling us we need a robust educational perspective before even talking about name change. So I like the limited action approach that doesn't put staff in the pinch, because I'm hearing the CAO saying we perhaps have other more serious issues to deal with at this point in time, and time is limited till the end of this term. So, you know, I'm not going to support the new direction here to put stuff in the line of fire here, creating something that's going to also foster further division.
Okay, so we have an amendment, Councillor Soto.
Just to be clear, we're speaking to the amendment to the amendment.
Correct. Striking the limit their actions.
And seconded, Councillor Miss.
I'll second the amendment to the amendment.
I want to speak to the, when we get to them.
Okay, Councillor Dow, you want to talk to the amended amendment?
Okay, I'll just like to make the general comment that I would be way happier if we were to, you know, scratch our heads for a little while, maybe do some thinking outside of just seeing which line we should cross out, and which one we should add, to try to get the concept that we want to do. I think I would be far happier if we were directing staff to do something and subsequently making a decision to postpone or not, we have language. This language, we could pass it or not pass it, that doesn't necessarily make any difference to anything we're doing. And we could amend the amended amendments all day, and we still wouldn't be at anywhere that actually comes to an action. I think we're better off spending time trying to figure out what action we want to do or not do.
Okay, we have our CAO, so hopefully we will call the motion.
Yeah, I would agree that this is a bit confusing and not the best process moving forward, and it's not clear from a staff perspective exactly what that really says, and that rather than amending an amendment and doing it, that we try to deal with the first one up there, and if people aren't not in favor of it, vote it down and bring forward a new amendment, or can we bring forward or a new motion, even though it's or is it just amendments that can be done? We have to do the whole amendment thing.
If the mayor's motion, whether it's amended or not, is voted down, someone could put a motion on the floor to do something different. Along the same lines.
We call the motion.
Thank you, I have one small thing to say. We as a group have a very poor track record on fixing things. And when we try to fix things, we start making things more complicated. And that is what we have a poor track record on, because we crash it. I wasn't of a mind to support the original motion, but I've changed my mind on that because I basically lost hope. But amending the original motion just takes me farther down that route. So I can't support any amendment that I can conceive of to this. I'd love to, but that's where I'm at with this. And I'll speak to the original motion if we ever get to that.
Absolutely.
I think to address what the CAO said, I don't think the purpose of this motion is to give any staff direction at all, whether it passes or not. I think this motion tells the community that now till October, no decision is going to be made from council that's going to make any further progress on name change matters. And if we want to direct staff beyond that, then we need a subsequent motion that's different. But I think this motion is really more for the community to understand that nothing is moving forward in the next 9 months.
Okay. Yes. Elliot.
Thank you so much, Your Worship. I would like to receive a report, which was why my original intent thought was, well, we could just postpone it until we get the report and then consider this exact motion. I think anything we do in preparation for actions that Councillor Dowd or any of us might like to take requires a report. And likely that report will get delivered too close to election time when we should be shutting down our activities anyways. And so I don't think postponing, telling the public that we're not going to get to it because we don't have the time we need is a good idea. I think they should know as soon as we know. However, saying all of that, I don't want this motion to be considered and then tie our hands for requiring or directing staff to make a report for next steps. So if this motion passes with or without amendments, can we still direct staff to bring forward a report, or do we tie our hands?
So the way I read it, that subject to staff being directed to prepare a report on a potential framework to engage any council, any framework for an engagement strategy. So it's the subject to, so subject to staff being directed. So I would say nothing is being postponed until
you guys actually give us direction to prepare a report. So nothing's going to happen unless you direct us to prepare a report. And I think it was Councillor Doughty said that it doesn't actually do anything because it requires a follow-up. So it's just
My
not
question was, without that
super helpful. So the answer is that with that right now, we're not going to be doing anything unless you guys do a subsequent motion to direct us to write a report.
Right, my question is, the whole amendment as a whole, if it's not in there and it gets rejected, would that prevent us from making a subsequent motion for a report?
Yes, I would say that it does.
So we
I
need
would
the
say,
amendment in order to get the report.
well, a amendment potentially, or vote it down and bring forward an actual clear motion to staff, and also potentially ask staff about their capacity in terms of delivering it or whether it's a good idea.
Okay, so I'm in favor of the amendment.
Okay, we have an amendment motion. All in favor of the amendment motion?
The little cross out. That's what we're voting on.
Are we voting on it? You said you were calling the question amended motion. That would be the entire wording, what's on there without voting on the amendments. If you want to vote on the amendment to the amendment, that's what we should do.
That's what you're doing, and it's just the limit their action to that you're voting.
Okay, all in favor? Folks. Okay, we'll now move to the amended motion. If we could bring that up for clarity. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I'll just speak to it quickly. I know this is very confusing. When I spoke to the corporate officer, I was like, you know, if we vote the mayor's motion down, or if it's supported, like there's a part of it that I wanted to support. I didn't want to vote it down, but I also wanted to make space for a report. And so it's tricky if it's voted down or if it's supported as is, then we couldn't take any subsequent action to get the ball rolling. And so this awkward wording allows us to propose a subsequent action to get the ball rolling. It's totally awkward. I agree, Councillor Doe. But doing it allows us to do the thing that I feel like is in the will of the room. And I know that like the way that I read this council, when we direct, if we direct staff subsequently, this council will not see it. We are postponing any further action on our part. And so there's some space and time. There's a bit of a concern for me about the first regular council meeting of November 2026. Maybe there needs to be a little bit more leeway, but the intention here is to work within the awkward constraints of Robert's rules and motions to ensure that we get some progress going. It won't be the public engagement. It won't be the opinion poll that that council previously has supported, but it would get the ball rolling. So it's awkward, but I also think is in line with the spirit of what we passed, 2 years ago in our strategic priorities.
Okay, so we have an amended motion. All in favor?
I have a question.
All right.
I don't recall us actually voting on the amendment to this motion.
That's what this is.
So I'm just asking because I'm listening to what goes on. The mayor said he's calling the question on the amended motion. I thought it would be time to vote on the amendment
to the motion. Thank you, Councillor Doe.
Thank you.
All in favor? Opposed? Was that a tie?
No.
Yes, that's a fourth vote.
Okay. So the motion passes.
The amendment.
Okay, now we'll move to the motion as amended. All in favor? Oh, we have a question.
We've been around the mulberry bush quite a few times. I just want to be clear. I'm not going to vote in favor of this motion. I think it's an important issue. Going to make a decision. We should make a clear decision. And this one says anything can happen after today. We could request a staff report. We could request something else. But it won't cause something to happen and it won't cause anything to happen. I'll be voting against it because it's just not clear to me.
All right. All in favor of the vote, Councillor South.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's a little difficult to wrap my head around this. I would originally have not supported the non-amended motion for precisely the reason that was just given, and that is that it's very unlikely that this council is going to be able to act on a report that comes forward from staff. What happens next term? The book is rewritten. The problem's not going to go away. But in my view, the problem is not the one that seems to be on the surface. The problem is the division in this community. And if that isn't addressed before any question of name change that has anything to do with anyone outside of our own community, we're going to just keep failing, or whoever follows us will. So I think, I'm not one to give up hope very easily, but I cannot, in spite of the fact that it goes against my grain to want to work process on this, I don't think this directs even staff and gives us any chance to do what I hoped we could do, why I had that meeting up in Grand Hall, why I tried to get us some kind of format to do town halls. That didn't work. In my view, what I wanted to see happen has failed over and over and over again. And so I don't believe that we can achieve anything. And I wish I hadn't voted on the support the amendment, because now I can't support that.
Okay.
Just a quick comment, Councillor Slugcott, I can understand exactly where you're coming from. You've been strong proponent of seeing something happen in this regard, but time has run out. And that's where we are, and we need to send a very, very clear message to the public. And from what I've heard from the public, they want the original motion passed so that they don't have to deal with this until next November. They don't want to have to hear about this anymore, because it's been very nice for some time now that we have not had to deal with this. I don't want to have to spend time spinning my wheels again for the next 9 months. So I support the original motion. I don't support this amendment because it's not clear to the public, and we need to be very clear where we're at, so it sends the message not only to our citizens, but it also sends a clear message to common that there is no opinion poll going to be coming out that makes anybody look that way or that way.
Okay.
Speaking to the motion on the table. I am in favor of the motion because when a new council comes in, and this has happened a couple times to me, a brand new council comes in very late in the game in November, you get your first draft of your budget proposed to you right after you first come in. Your ability to make suggestions in that is very shortly after that. And a report that sums up all the places we've been already and the information we've received and make some recommendations for what an engagement strategy could look like if they choose to move forward, would allow them to have an opinion right away. And they can do what the report says. They could say no to that. It's up to them. With no report, if they're trying to get anywhere at all, they'll have to get a report. And they missed the boat for a year. And so what I think this does is helps any incoming council deliberate on whether they want to move forward with some engagement in that first year or not. So it doesn't make the choices for them. It just simply sums up where we've been, all the information we have, and proposes a strategy that could be done. And we never had that strategy. We had no way to enable anything to do with anything because we didn't have that during our council. We didn't get to that. It didn't come before us. We had capacity issues that didn't allow us to move forward. So if this is I think this is worthwhile doing. I think if this passes, I would make a motion to direct staff to bring back a report. And that won't help us do anything at all. You're right about that. But it might help in the future for the new council to consider what they want to do. It'll be up to them, not us.
Good. We have an amended motion. So, yeah, new item.
No, yeah, it's a new thought. So I support the original motion. This doesn't tell staff how detailed or substantive a report has to be. And because of that, you know, I don't want staff to be wasting their time, frankly. I will support this because essentially it means we're directing staff to do something, whatever. No, we're not. If we then direct staff, but if we don't direct staff, then the whole thing doesn't happen. So I want to see us not go any farther with any process other than now. Obviously, the only option we have is to direct staff if we want to see the second half of this motion go forward. And so now I find myself in position or in the mindset to actually support this.
Yes.
Yeah, it's that's where it's a mind bender, this one. In the sense, like, there's like the spirit of it and then the awkward words. And again, the awkward words had to do with the nature of the original motion, which I support the intent of, and also want to see something. So what I would love to see is to pass this, that Councillor Elliott has offered to propose a subsequent motion, directing staff, again, as Councillor Southgate did, it doesn't direct them to the scale of detail, but it gets the ball rolling. And in passing that subsequent motion, the original motion that that Mayor Wasno proposed stands, and it is supported. It's awkward, but it achieves the original intent with the addition of staff being able to work on a report of some detail.
Okay, we have another question.
No, I don't want to extend this forever.
Okay, do you want to
I would-
call the motion then?
Don't want to extend this forever, but I would rather see council make a clear decision. If you want to make a decision to ask for a staff report, I think we should do that. If we want to have something to vote on that will end up with us doing nothing, we should just say, let's do nothing, which was what the original motion was. At least that's straightforward. Says council intends to do nothing. And it doesn't say we'll do nothing unless maybe we do something else. Well, I'd rather be crystal clear.
Okay, corporate officer.
I just wanted to clarify that notwithstanding Councillor Doug's comments just now, what's on the floor is the motion as amended. So when you call the question, that's what you vote for, and nothing else, notwithstanding you might have liked the original motion better. I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Thank you very much. Okay. I'm calling the vote on the motion which is on the screen in front of us. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
I'm just gonna ask this question of staff. Would it be better for me to confer with staff on a motion that helps define what is needed to get a meaningful report and do a notice of motion and come back when I'm like off the cuff doesn't always do it the way it should. And so I've been thinking I want to make that motion, but I don't think I can't make it at the next meeting if we do a notice of motion for staff to prepare a report and then refine the wording. I'm asking procedurally if that is better for staff.
I think that what needs to be clear in the motion you make is when the intended deadline for the report is, as opposed to anything else, because it's very vague and it's unclear. And without getting into debate, it would have been, I could have probably provided a bit more clarity about something, but if what you're looking to do is actually have staff draft a report on the name change issue for the next, to be available for the next council, including opportunities, I think something like that is fine. For me, what needs to be clear is when this is done, because then I can assign staff to do it. The challenge I have with this is that if it's not for this council really shouldn't be doing a report for the next council, because the next council has to determine whether or not this is even a priority. And I feel like this could be a big waste of staff time doing a report for a future council on something they might not even be interested in. And so it's kind of weird, to be perfectly honest, and I wouldn't recommend doing what you're doing. But if you do it, make it clear what it's going to be for, so at least we have an end game assigned to it. We have a lot of stuff, a lot of things we're working on. If this is a priority for this council, really it should be for this council. If it's not for this council, it gets a bit odd.
Okay, we have 22 minutes left. We have a number of legislative matters. Can we move on? Okay, the legislative matter 11.1 tourist service agreement audit requirement.
I don't know if Ken didn't ever make it back on, but I can speak to this report on his behalf. Basically, what has taken place is that the one audit company in town that provided audits is no longer providing audits, and is causing a concern for the tourism society. And our agreement requires them to actually have an audit, and what we are looking to do is replace that requirement with a review engagement requirement, which is a lesser form of review, but still meets the in terms of what Ken thinks meets the threshold of what would be required for that organization. But it also helps with the costing, and the recommendation before you reflects that.
Somebody come forward.
I move that council direct staff to bring forward an amended agreement with the society which replaces the audit requirement within the agreement with a review engagement requirement.
Any further discussion? Oh.
I'm curious about whether there's a way we can increase assurances on behalf of the tourism society, given the public scrutiny that has been happening lately. I think they do a great job, and I want to make sure that they can show that. So the city has auditors. Can we have our auditor give us an opinion on their review, or are there other ways we can make sure the public interest in that money is secure?
According to the chief financial officer, he's fine with, again, this level of review based on the threshold and what the society does and the dollar value of what they're dealing with. So his professional opinion is that this is fine. if he thought, he wouldn't recommend it if he thought it was putting us at risk.
No.
Any further questions? All in favor? That's unanimous. 7.2, building bylaw and fee bylaw amendments.
Here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You can have this.
Oh.
I'll grab mine. I got another one.
Cameras right there. So.
Okay, I will be over here. So it's not that way. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm just going to start this evening with drawing your attention to a minor clerical error that is in the amendment bylaws before you. Unfortunately, the heading repeal appears in both amendment bylaws just previous to section 4. That word should not be there. We are not repealing anything this evening. I understand after speaking with the corporate officer that the easiest way to address that is by a simple motion that I think has been drafted to just strike that word from those amendment bylaws before we get into the report and the main motion.
I'll move that the heading entitled repeal be stricken from the draft amendment bylaws 2787 and 2788 prior to consideration of readings by council.
Seconded by Councillor Silcott. All in favor? That's unanimously.
Thank you very much for that. And apologies for that error. I'll jump into the report now then, and just to briefly summarize that following direction that was given to staff from council, we have brought forward amendments to the building and fee bylaws. These amendments are really geared to improve clarity, consistency, and cost recovery in how building permit fees are administered. Brief summary of some of the changes: removing the fee schedule from the fee bylaw, from the building bylaw and introducing it into the fee bylaw. Providing a clear definition of construction value and how building permit fees are calculated, and introducing a non-refundable application fee, as well as some other minor changes. Notably, I want to say that no changes are proposed to the underlying rates used to calculate the building permit fees, and all of the other fees remain unchanged than what is included in your report. Again, these are really geared to enhance cost recovery and reduce reliance on general taxation for the provision of the services. Happy to answer any questions.
Seeing no questions, Councillor Pom.
Just one question. Have we reached out to any of our developers in town in regards to the changes?
No, there is no requirement for any consultation in that regards. We've not undertaken that.
Okay. So one other question, that is minimum building permit increased to 100, but the building permits for single wide and 500 and double wide mobiles is 750. Can you explain why that's so high?
Correct. Yeah, and that has changed on consultation with the building official that works through these permits. Previously, they were extremely low and were not covering the cost of the service needed from the building official and from staff to administer those building permits. So this is
what's the present cost?
The present cost for a single wide is $158 and a double wide is $189, I believe. So less than $200. So not sufficient to cover staff time.
The reason I ask is most people that live in mobiles are not all that wealthy. Go ahead, you work it.
Okay, any further? All in favor? Oh, sorry. Do we have the motion? Councillor Armida, please.
You use this together or separate?
Better do them separate.
Yeah. Okay. I move the City of Powell River Building Bylaw 2141, 2007, Amendment Bylaw 2787, 2026 be given first, second, and third reading.
Seconded by Councillor Isaacson. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move the City of Powell River Fee Bylaw 92, 2005, Amendment Bylaw 2788, 2026 be given first, second, and third reading.
Seconded by Councillor Silcott. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll now move to 11.3, which is proposed bylaw 2760.
Council, the purpose of the report before you is to present City of Powell River permanent closure and removal highway dedication bylaw 2760, 2024 for council's consideration of adoption. Bylaw 2760 received 3 readings in November 2024. And now, after achieving conditions related to securing consent from the Cassette Regional Hospital District, Council can consider adoption. It's somewhat unusual to provide an additional staff report at this stage, but due to the time that has elapsed since the bylaws received the first 3 readings, it seemed like an opportunity to remind Council and the public about the process and the broader intention behind closing this portion of the Complex Way highway dedication. So to recap, BC Housing has requested that the city partner with them to facilitate the development of a provincially funded permanent supportive housing and shelter facility. BC Housing's ask is that the city provides city-owned land in the form of a long-term lease on which the city would be built. The land in question is undeveloped highway dedication fronting Joyce Avenue adjacent to the hospital property located at 5000 Joyce Avenue. Proposed facility would include 43 single-unit residential supportive units and 20 shelter beds. Supportive units are deeply affordable studio apartments for people who need various supports to maintain their housing. Residents would be adults of all genders who need support to maintain stable housing. Should Council wish to partner with BC Housing and grant a long-term lease over that portion of Complex Way highway dedication, the first step is adoption of Bylaw 2760 presented to you today for your consideration. And recommendation before you is that Council adopt Bylaw 2760.
Councilor New. I move that City of Powell River permanent closure and removal of highway dedication bylaw 2760 2024 be adopted.
Second by Councilor Silva. Any questions? Yes, Councilor Doug.
So my understanding is now that after we do this, the next step will be to do a rezoning bylaw. Rezone the property.
Yeah, through the chair to Councilor Doug. So the zoning bylaw also has 3 readings. Those were granted at the same time in November of 2024. So once this process takes place, it's submitted to land titles, title is raised, and there's an actual fee simple parcel that is vested in the city's name. That's when the rezoning bylaw would come forward for a consideration of adoption.
Okay, so there's basically one more step. And after that one step is finished, the lease agreement can be completed with BC Housing, and BC Housing will go ahead and build a facility at their expense. And that's the point I want to make, because a lot of people are writing me and telling me about the huge expense that the city is incurring supportive housing. And I want to point out that provincial government is paying for that through BC Housing, and the cost to the city is discussing lease agreements and discussing the rezoning, the small costs there in preparing the land, and the land will remain property of the city.
That's a problem. Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Got to gather my thought for it because I lost my thought for a minute. In terms of, oh, yes. Are there any timelines associated once this passes and when construction could possibly start?
There's an ideal timeline, but I don't know that I can be too specific about that. I think that BC Housing is eager to get moving, but as you know, things take time. And so raising title could take some time with land titles, and then the rezoning process, and then the lease negotiation, and then a building permit submittal. And yeah, so these things do take time.
So just for the record, I have voted against this development each step of the way. I intend to do the same today for a number of reasons that have already been stated to you in terms of security, location, blah, blah, blah. The one thing that our MLA has stated publicly, which I found quite interesting, was if council and the city was not supportive of this, you wouldn't be getting these built. So that's been publicly stated by our MLA. I just wanted to let everybody in the table here know that. Thank you, Worship.
Any further questions before I call the motion? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Passed. Okay. To 11.4, which is the appointment of Chief Election Officer and Deputy Chief Election Officer. the 2026 general local election to our corporate officer.
Just gonna call the motion, because I don't know if the corporate
I was
officer,
gonna make a motion too, so. We all know where it's go.
unless the corporate officer has some magical words to add to the report, but I move that pursuant to section 58.1 of the Local Government Act, Peter DeJong be appointed Chief Election Officer for conducting the 2026 general local election and assent voting, if any, with power to appoint other election officials as required for the administration and conduct of the 2026 general local election, and assent voting, if any. And that Jessica Walls be appointed Deputy Chief Election Officer for the 2026 general local election, and assent voting, if any.
Seconded by Elliott. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Passed unanimously.
Well, we have no such motion on the agenda, if I could.
Sorry, see it.
I would like to make a notice of motion.
Okay.
That's next on the agenda.
Great. Continue.
The notice of motion is as read, and it may be refined before it gets to the agenda, but move that council direct staff to prepare a report regarding the potential need change that includes a review of previous information, direction from the province, recommendations from the working group, petitions, any other relevant information, and provide recommendation on a framework for community engagement that includes resources needed and a realistic budget. That's my notice of motion. We'll bring that next time if people want to add change.
If you believe that we are now in a public communication, is that correct?
Unless the, yeah.
All right. Do we have anybody? Or not, do we have anybody online?
Nobody online.
Sorry, Greg, one more time.
Nobody online.
Thank you. We have 6 minutes and 20 seconds of the open period. Thank you very much.
Let's do great studies.
Sorry about distractions recently.
Yeah, you later. Yeah.